person who drafted this plan, Ellen Sinha, that person served under the Congress government.
Outside the wonderful cities that we live in, most of justice is still dealt out by customary courts.
Right.
Back in Bihar, people who were compulsive litigators, they were called case ladwa. They would fight cases on behalf of other people in the village. Oh, तुमको कोई problem है? अच्छा ठीक है, इनसे problem है. I will fight on your behalf. I know I'm going to be trolled for this. I really don't know how it is in the IT sector and in the tech and medicine. But in law, I don't think there is a concept of work-life balance. The great Ram Janmabhoomi used to say that law is a jealous mistress. At times I'm disillusioned with this generation. They're looking for work-life balance in a profession. Do work-life balance, go work in a bank. 9 to 5, good money.
Bank does not also have a work-life balance. I mean, unless it's SBI you're talking about.
Yeah, something like that where you have a 1 hour lunch break.
Famously, I was told in law school when they were teaching me economics that there are no free lunches. I mean, that's a part of growing up. The only free lunches which are provided to you are those provided by your parents. Your parents are not there, your free lunches have to be paid for. And you pay for them. You pay for them by your hard work.
Very beautiful venue. It's very rare that we perhaps get such a beautiful venue to shoot podcasts. And
it is.
So when we are talking about, say, if you were to introduce yourself to our younger audience, and we do a bit of an informal introduction in that sense.
Yes.
When we describe an additional Solicitor General, for that matter, what are the roles and responsibilities? How would you introduce a younger audience who may not know what exactly you do?
I appear on behalf of the government. Largely my role is restricted to the Supreme Court, where I represent the government in the Supreme Court. I also represent the government sometimes in high courts or tribunals where I'm asked to. I'm a lawyer who's a counsel who appears on behalf of the government. That's my role, so I advise and I appear. That's about more or less it, and whenever I'm called on to appear specifically in matters, I do take up.
Is that any different from private practice?
Substantially different, because when you're appearing on behalf of the government, you have an added responsibility. Plus, the government works in its very own distinct way. Unlike private practice, where you have a leeway of doing a lot of things, as a lawyer, especially a senior lawyer, appearing on behalf of the government, it is your responsibility to take into account, when you're representing your client, both public interest and ensuring fairness.
So say suppose somebody is extremely vocal on Twitter, would they not be eligible for such jobs in the future, Shubhendu?
Well, they should be eligible, but at times it is taken into consideration. People look for your past when you are given a job. Especially representing the government or becoming a judge and things like that. We have seen in Victoria Gauri's case, Justice Victoria Gauri now, where people dug her old posts on Twitter. But you also have to understand that Twitter is very different from what you are in real life. You outrage on Twitter, you write random things on Twitter that may not reflect your professional being. It is just writing and ranting. It could, and you talk about a lot of things, like you talk from Chole Bhature to the alleys of Brooklyn. That does not mean that it should impact your professional career or things like that. But yeah, that unfortunately that is there. So I often see that people either go incognito, they delete their account, or they write very measured things. They don't speak freely, and That's about it. So because ASG's role is representing the government. So you are the face of the government in the court. And when you are face of the government in the court, what you say is exactly what the government wants to be said.
How do you arrive at a rationale? Say, like a lot of judges and a lot of lawyers come from, like, say, different backgrounds and stuff like that. So,
Yes.
but there is a common ground that you agree on. There are certain values that you agree upon. So, how do we arrive at that? Despite, say, in a media context, if I were to give you an example, there's discussion of, say, media bias all the time. But I for one have this opinion that it's a cognitive bias and it's only natural, as so long as we are impartial. So do we establish those boundaries? How do we establish those boundaries in the case of judiciary?
There are two ways to look at it. One is the obvious and clear way is whether it is in conformity with any law. That's clear. So you shouldn't be doing anything illegal. If it is illegal, it is to that extent to have to be dealt with in that way. But in addition to that, there's an amount of justice and fairness, which is, I think, key to arriving at a decision in the judicial process. So besides the law, these are the three sort of key ingredients which go into taking a decision. The English have a word for it, with combining justice and fairness. They call it equity. But in India, we don't actually have the equity jurisdiction. We use a lot of these conceptions of justice and fairness, which we trace out from our constitutional values.
But can a good lawyer be a good judge later on? Because once you are on the side of where you're arguing for someone or you're arguing against someone, there's a different mindset that you adopt.
Can I crack a joke?
Yeah, please. We can make this completely like a little light.
And please, this is just a joke. I don't mean it. But in the olden days, people used to say, and some of the greatest lawyers have said that if you are a good lawyer, you don't end up becoming judge because you don't want to be a judge.
Right.
But we have seen that some of the really good lawyers in Supreme Court and in various high courts have ended up becoming fantastic judges. There are people in the Supreme Court who are judges who have been fantastic lawyers, both in terms of their public demeanor while they were lawyers, or their knowledge of law, or their sense of justice, even as lawyers. They have shown tremendous qualities, and probably that is why they are on the bench now in Supreme Court and in various high courts. So I think a good lawyer obviously makes a good judge. But would a good lawyer want to be a judge? That is for you to ask those people who the offer is being made to.
For a lot of our younger audience who may not be aware of who Shubhendu is, he was one of the youngest lawyer in the Ram Janmabhoomi case. And are we allowed to mention that?
Yeah.
And he is somebody who is very well read, he writes a lot for different magazines, and he used to be a part of think tanks as well. And we've had the privilege of knowing each other for a while now, and I insisted that we do this conversation on, say, anything broadly under the sun, but connected to ideally how we can reform our institutions, how India is getting shaped up. Now the word Bharat is almost, it's a popular parlance, almost like everybody uses that. And it's not very odd in that sense that a native Hindi speaker uses Bharat instead of India. So in that sense, I hate to bring this up so early into the conversation. When we talk about, say, decoloniality, how do you view that? I mean, without going too much into it.
Decolonization, I think Bharat as a term is part of the Constitution. The Constitution very clearly says India, that is Bharat. So I won't say it's part of decolonizing anything. It's part of recognizing the very identity of India. I think the identity of India cannot be separated from that of Bharat. I think Bharat and India is integrally the same thing.
Yeah.
I think what we are lacking, and what you're talking about decolonializing, is basically having the lens of Bharat to look at India. And that's extremely important, because in many ways Bharat is, the way to look at India through Bharat is looking at it from from the way the people of India look at their institutions. And I would agree with you that it is important for us to take off the lens of India and put on the lens of Bharat. Because that's possibly the way forward. And I'll say this, to create a rooted civilizational understanding of our institutions.
So when we're talking about, say, how there's a belief in the justice system largely, where you come from, like particularly, like, and where I come from, even today, if we go into the villages, everybody normally avoids getting into formal conflicts in institutions, whether it's the police or the court or anything. In that sense, that the whole panchayat system that we've had, that will sit under a banyan tree and then resolve things out.
Yes.
Do you still think somehow those values are also imbibed in the modern legal system, or perhaps that's a little absent today?
Well, the issue with that panchayati system was that you had people deciding things on issues that they may have had no idea. Because there are so many laws now, justice is no more traditional. It is all codified.
Yeah.
The fact that it is codified, you need to have people who are trained in those codes. And if you don't have people trained in those codes, there is bound to be a conflict once it is resolved by the panchayat system. One may not like it, one may like it. People will always have this thing lingering in their mind that I have not been served justice
But
in
that's
the
equally applicable to, say, a judgment given by a court as well, right?
No, but the thing is that people still have that level of belief that, okay, there is a judge chosen and there is a statutory appointment for that judge, and that person is doing it by reading into the laws, listening to the parties, applying his mind or her mind based on those codes and laws. Unlike in a panchayati justice, where justice is served through common sense. I think that law is all about common sense. But then once you have codification into picture, you need to have people who are trained in those codes.
But is codification always a good thing? Vikramda, you've spoken about this.
I've addressed, I wanted to speak on what Shubhendu just marked, and I'll also
We can be
codification.
slightly informal, I think.
Yeah. In relation to my take on that is, on the question which you asked Shubhendu, is if you still look at it today, and it's a controversial take, it's my personal take, it's not the government's, is the crisis of confidence in the legal institutions
Yeah.
which we have today in India, outside the wonderful cities that we live in. And if you go 10 kilometers outside the city, is you would realize most of justice is still dealt out by customary courts.
Right.
You can call it by various different names. You can call it in West Bengal by a different name. You call it, I'm sure, in Karnataka by a different name, and everywhere by a different name. But that's still by a customary. Courts is not the word for a decision-making process.
Yeah.
It's still, because people still do not see or do not own up to the courts or the courts which have been primarily set up by the British. And you look at the legal system in itself. The legal system are still based out of the colonial cities, including the small towns.
What do you think drives that fear?
Because the people haven't owned up to the system, because the people don't think that the system springs from itself.
How do you think we can resolve that?
Mahatma Gandhi said that, Mahatma Gandhi's in Hind Swaraj was of the view that, the courts, the medical system, the telegraph.
Very critical of it.
Very critical of it.
Okay.
But I personally think that the state in some ways gets it, because the state therefore has amended the constitution to try to bring in some form of Panchayati Raj into the constitution.
Right. Yeah.
It has also tried to form Nyaya Panchayats to decide on small issues. But the state at the same time is apprehensive because it doesn't want to recognize entities which it obviously not within it to dispense justice because it shows there's a crisis in its recognition.
Yeah.
But the state gets the problem. But the whole question is the state tries to deal with it. And I've always said that the state tries to deal with it in a peculiar way. It tries to create institutions to decide on these issues, on smaller levels of those issues,
Yeah.
like the Nyaya Panchayats.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, tries to make illegal other decision-making processes which are largely of the same thing. So you will have the panchayat, would be called a Khap Panchayat, and acted upon. And I'm sure, for every institution, and I'm of the view that not every decision, there are huge drawbacks to the panchayat system as well. No system is perfect in itself. But the state recognizes that people in India still sort of rely on this sort of decision-making process.
Right.
But it plays between the good guys and the bad guys. Sometimes it says that, okay, the ones which we recognize are the good guys and ones which we don't recognize are the bad guys.
When you talk about perhaps the perception of justice not being able to be delivered to the last person in a village, is it an issue of scale, Shubhendu, when you look at it, especially with, say, we are talking about AI being used in delivering judgments, technology. Today you can view a lot of the court appearances online, and it's become a lot more smoother and easier.
No, I believe that it is an issue of scale. Earlier people were very conservative when it came to litigating. Now everyone wants to litigate. Maybe probably people have lost patience, or people have a lot of money. Because paying lawyers, going to court, paying court fees and all these things are an expensive affair.
Yeah.
I mean, fighting a litigation is an expensive affair. At least in the courts where I practice, I think people for something as less as 30 lakh rupees are ready to pay lawyers fees and everything to the tune of 25-30 lakhs.
Oh, wow.
So for what are you getting in the end? Like maybe fighting for 2 years and then you are getting 35
Because those decisions are driven by emotions, perhaps?
Perhaps, and people think they have an appetite for litigation. Now people have an appetite for litigation. Earlier, there
really?
would be... I'll give you an example in my place back in Bihar. The people who were compulsive litigators, they were called litigants. They were called case ladwa. So they would fight cases on behalf of other people in the village. Oh, तुमको कोई problem है? अच्छा ठीक है, इनसे problem है. I will fight on your behalf. Not everyone would do that. There would be jamindars and people with money and land and property. They would be fighting cases and they would spend their life in court. Poor people with limited means, middle class of those days, never went to court. Even if they had bigger issues. They hardly went to court. Now you have somebody coming and just pushing you out of their car, and then you are in court. Both the parties are in court. That is how it is. People have an appetite for litigation, and that is why probably I believe that this is an issue of scale. The number of judges has not increased. You have not made enough appointments. You have not had enough infrastructure, both physical and technological. And that is why it is piling on and piling up, and you are not able to do it. So AI, I don't know in what context are you saying that AI would be useful. If at all it is useful, it would be able to look at disputes and direct them and suggest a way out to the judges or the court staff as to how it has to be dealt and how long it will.
In some countries, AI is even delivering judgments like on smaller civil matters.
People who are going to fight to court here are very different from people abroad.
Or is it that there is an economy built around?
No,
there's a legal economy which is perhaps too strong.
I think is an interesting.
There's a human aspect involved.
Yeah, I personally think I have a little bit of a difference Because what we see today is, I personally think it comes down to a little bit of a crisis of confidence. Because while there is in urban areas, as you see, there is always a large push for litigation. And Indians have been famous litigators. Shubhendu thinks it's about today. I think one of the, at the time of Macaulay, I think one of the minutes of Macaulay actually records the fact that Indians are famously litigative.
Right.
So it's
Because they're
always been
argumentative.
there. Because, we are argumentative sort of
Right.
in many ways. So we are famously litigative. But I think what is now happening is there's a recognition within the judiciary itself, and that you see all over. I think a large number of discussions on that, that maybe the solution to dispute resolution is mediation.
Yeah. Out of
And
court
the
settlement.
top echelons of the judiciary are openly speaking about it. The government is speaking about it. And there are huge discussions as to why there is a need to push mediation. I would look at it in a civilizational point of view. I think that is how we have resolved our issues.
Yeah, I had this in mind actually.
And because we've resolved our issues, that is more in akin to something which we are comfortable with.
So, in a way, do you think the ideas that were present in ancient jurisprudence are already existent, or now we are sort of forming and giving them a shape? And
I
idea?
personally think it always existed, and that's what my take on that is. I'm not the only person who noticed this, but I think there have been outsiders who also noticed this. But my view on that is very clear.
Okay.
I think we know for a fact that we have, we exist in the society that we do, and the society that we do has a certain conception of justice, and the institutions which we have is for better or for worse. Some of it is inherited, or lots of it is inherited from a
British.
different civilizational background.
Sure.
And so now we have shaped these institutions in our own making, in the image of ourselves, which means if you look at it, and applies in various cases, in various instances, various institutions.
Can you give us a few examples for our younger audience? Say, if you were to describe how the justice system in ancient India and under some empires would be.
I think a lot of anyone who knows the conception of, I'll just give a shorthand of it. When the justice system in many ways in India was through, and I'll describe the objective of the justice system first. The objective was to ensure that you conform to your word, to your dharma. Dharma does not, as always discussed, dharma does not mean
religious
in a
connotation.
religious manner, but dharma means that which holds on to the world together. And to make you perform your dharma, justice was to help you to follow that process. So justice was in many ways a consensual decision for you to conform to your dharma. The process through which it was arrived at historically were these institutions which were village-based institutions, which was, because it was dharma, so it was largely based on societal injunctions rather than by the state. The state had a little portion to deal with it, but was largely by societal injunctions. And the decision-making process was largely through societal decision-making bodies. Like what you have, this panchayat system never actually disappeared in India.
Right.
You have it through the historical times, even at times when the states did not support the panchayat system. Sometimes when it was actively against it. Sometimes during the British colonial period when they tried to actively get rid of it. But it still existed because people had confidence in it. Because people recognized their methods of resolving their disputes in the justice system. In the justice system or the panchayat system. You can call it by various different names. Now, today, Mahatma Gandhi, I think, is one of the most perceptive commentators of Indian civilization. And in Hind Swaraj, he recognizes that. He recognizes that with the education system as well. And today, the way we have sort of diversified our education system, as well as, this push towards mediation system, which means that, it is important now that we recognize that as well. Of course, there is the broader question of mediation being an easier way to resolve issues than going through litigation, which is a long drawn-out process. and therefore you need mediation. But I think it also comes from a civilizational understanding of how we see ourselves and our society.
When we talk about Dharma again, Shubhendu, it's about duties again. But we perhaps, to very loosely put it, we are a rights-forward country in that sense, where people are being educated about what rights they have, and in that sense we've borrowed from different constitutions. So is that going against, say, an individual governing philosophy in the lens in which an individual may perceive what justice is to him is perhaps different from what we are being asked or offered? The state is completely taking this differently in a sense.
No, there's no doubt that our constitution is particularly has a very rights-based approach towards individuals. But India, since its ancient times, has been very community-driven system. The Indian system has been very community-driven. Individual rights, of course, were always recognized, but you had a lot of concept of trusteeship of the resources. The king was in fact not the ruler in its perfect sense, but was a caretaker of the people, the subjects, the empire. I know a lot of kingdoms where the kings actually never call themselves the kings, but they are the sevaks of the god. For example, in
Travancore and Cochin.
Travancore,
And there is a provision in the constitution which protects the contribution from Consolidated Fund of India to the Devaswam funds of Travancore and Cochin.
Yeah.
The reason why it does that is because at the time of merger of states, so there was a privy purse given. So that was the condition in which it was sort of agreement was reached that the Devaswam funds would be contributed to from the Consolidated Fund of India, like privy purses for others. Yeah. Now, when privy purses for the rest of India are abolished, that portion remained because that was, of course, to the god.
Right. So that is when there's perhaps a distinction that is established.
Yes, and see, with constitution coming into picture, individual rights, individual liberties and all solidified like anything. I don't know, I'm not going to criticize it, I'm not going to eulogize it, but we have actually moved away from the community needs and community welfare to individual needs and individual welfare.
Is that because of the family system as well? Or
it has impacted the family system. It has impacted the society as a large, like village communities, or in Bengal you call it pada, a small hamlet, small area in a village or a small area in a town, where people have common needs, people have common aspirations. Now that is no more there, or maybe very little, because people have now individual needs, individual aspirations, and that is particularly driven by the concept of rights, as we see in the West. That is where we are now leading to. I don't know if individualism or individualist society is a good society or a bad society. I'm not going to make a value judgment on it, but that is where we are heading. The problem with strictly rights-based approach to things is that people often forget or neglect duties, which are equally important and imbibed in Indian cultural ethos. That if you have a right to do something, you have a duty to protect. So if you have a right to cut trees, you
have the
duty to plant 10 more trees.
Right.
Well, we are cutting trees, but we are not planting trees. I'm just making it very simple. That people think that they have the right to cut trees, but people don't realize that they also have the duty to plant some more trees in its place.
This is the first day and night podcast we've done. So we had a little bit of a change in the venue somewhere over here itself, but because it got really dark. But we were discussing about how rights versus duties. Is there a generational, I want to know from the both of you, from say there is a sense of dissatisfaction in any field when the younger generation is sort of trying to find its feet in any different field, and but that maybe Shubhendu can address, because younger lawyers may have different expectations within your own fraternity, but you may have had, since you've had such an illustrious career, you've seen how things have changed over the years, and it's a gradual and it's a painful, slow change. So I want you to put things into perspective as to like how both these things align with each other.
The profession has substantially changed. The profession changes depending upon the generation. Like, for example, the generation before me, I've seen the old lawyers, their amount of memory skill. They could, any lawyer would tell you that the old lawyers could recognize, remember, page, paragraph, citations. Citations are the references for each and every sort of case, and they could rattle it off. They could rattle off the names. But that skill is redundant now. So now what we have is you can run it through SEC and you know everything.
Yeah.
And now, in terms of now what we have is we've gone into ChatGPT. We've got into AI, which makes the entire process even more simpler. So that itself dictates how a lawyer or an advocate actually addresses legal research. And another example, like whenever you are talking about, let's say, counsel practice, appearing in courts, the skill of a lawyer appearing and arguing a matter in court is substantially different of how you appear on VC. The example is this, that if you appear, and you would know this because we are on a sort of a camera thing.
But is that also because there are things like morality that we'll have to deal with, which probably AI can't sufficiently deal with it?
Morality is part of it because that reflects the society that we are in. Because the values, the norms, the mores of the society has changed substantially. At the end of the day, lawyers are not separate from the society.
Sure.
It's you, are you, and I always put this question to people, that are you, do you have the same sort of morality or framework of understanding the world which your father had or your grandfather had? I would say substantially not. And because it's substantially not, I reflect the society, the mores. I think we've become a much more transactional world. I'm not saying it's good, bad, indifferent. I'm just saying that is how it is.
So when you look at young lawyers, what difference do you feel from the generation that
I think there are two things.
up
Number one, everybody thinks that they deserve to be successful very fast.
Sure.
There's very little patience.
That's not just with lawyers, but yeah.
Yes, that reflects on legal work.
That is how the society has changed and evolved.
And second, people are not willing to work very hard for it.
Work as hard, yeah.
And everybody famously wants that, what is that famous word called in your generation called work-life balance?
Yeah.
So, I don't understand work-life balance.
I'm working here and I find my balance because it's such a beautiful place. So
it's a wonderful place, no doubt about it. But, in a perfect world, you would be able to earn that amount of money with a work-life balance. But that's not how the world functions. But I see increasingly, and I see this increasingly with my younger colleagues at the bar, that everybody wants, all the frills without having to work for it, which means that you try to take shortcuts.
Yeah.
And I've had this discussion with my junior colleagues when they first joined, and I put them together when they sort of joined the offices, and I asked this question to them, that what do you want from the profession? And, famously, one got up and said that, or sat there and just told me, sir, I want a wonderful work-life balance. I don't want to work that hard. I just want to be happy. That's a new one for me because, we come from a background where you got into a profession, you worked really hard. So sometimes I wonder, how does this all add up?
We've got
But
it
it's
easy,
your
that's for
generation, so, you people know how it all adds up.
Yeah. What about you, Shubhendu?
I'm not one of those work-life balance people, particularly because I still follow the old methods of law.
Is that
and the
because
profession.
you've also worked with like senior counsels very early in your life?
Yes, because I worked only with one person, that is Vikramjit sir. I worked with him and I actually learned it the hard way. You have to work hard to get to where you want to go. There's no such thing as work-life. I know I'm going to be trolled for this. Just like Mr. Narayan Murthy was like heavily trolled.
Yeah.
I really don't know how it is in the IT sector and in the tech and medicine. But in law, I don't think there is a concept of work-life balance. Howsoever people may be talking about it. But the fact is that you have to work hard. Law is a very demanding profession.
Yeah.
Ram Janmabhoomi, the great Ram Janmabhoomi used to say that law is a jealous mistress. So she will take all your time and your wife would be complaining about it. So that is how it is. If you have a matter to argue tomorrow and you want to give in your 100%, would you not read the entire file? The file could be as small as 200 pages and it could be as big as 5,000 pages. Will you not read it? Will you not do the research and come up with the judgments, citations that support your argument? I know people in yesteryears from the generation that comes, they did not have the facility of internet and all those softwares which we now use for digging out judgments, SEC, Manupatra and all these things. They had to go to the library. You would have seen those books in the lawyers' chambers and look at the year 1969, volume 3, page number 156. Then you take those ladders and go and pull out this book. That has eased a lot. Because now we have software for it, we just put the citation and we get what we want to. But still we have to read it, prepare ourselves for the next day. And there is no substitute to it. There is absolutely no substitute to it. And I think hard work and one thing that people, hard work is the most important thing in law. I mean, you could be very brilliant, the most brilliant guy in the class. And if you don't work hard enough in law, you are not going to succeed. You may be a mediocre student in class, and if you work hard, be very sure that you would succeed in the profession. That is the nature of the profession. Coming back to your question as to how this generation looks at it, well, at times I'm disillusioned with this generation for the simple reason, as Sir said, that they're looking for work-life balance in a profession. If you have to do work-life balance, go work in a bank. 9 to 5, good money.
Bank does not also have a work-life balance. I mean, unless it's SBI you're talking about.
Yeah, something like that where you have a 1 hour lunch break. Do that. Even for us, there is no lunch break. I mean, even in lunch we are reading because after lunch we have a matter to argue. So these are the things. But
But maybe work-life balance is a problem when people don't find it to be rewarding. Like in media, for instance, like we probably work equally hard. I mean, if you're working in a television channel, perhaps like on election days you'll have to work for 18 hours, and you probably earn 18,000
I personally think
a month.
success comes at a cost.
Yeah.
There are no, famously I was told in law school when they were teaching me economics that there are no free lunches.
Yeah.
And I think there are no free lunches in the world. I think that's a part of growing up. I think as you grow up, you realize that there are no free lunches. The only free lunches which are provided to you are those provided by your parents. So they are the only free lunches.
And now by the state.
And I think the state also has a duty to do that. But the only actually free lunches in the world are provided by your parents.
Yeah.
So once your parents are not there, your free lunches have to be paid for.
Yeah.
And you pay for them. You pay for them by your hard work. And I think, I hope your generation, realizes this, because there's some sort of a feeling in this generation as if everything's going to come to them, and they are sort of entitled to it by right, which my generation grew up without. Sometimes the world which you see in today, the India which you see today, the wonderful roads, the fantastic airports, the infrastructure, the wealth. I grew up without this amount of wealth. And you ask anyone of my generation, we were not this wealthy. We take a lot of it for granted.
Do you think the pursuit of justice was perhaps a little harder back then?
I think pursuit of justice is always is a struggle. I don't know, you've seen Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice, and even then the pursuit of justice is difficult, is tough. As they say in Sanskrit, Dharma shukshma. Dharma is shukshma. It is difficult.
Yeah.
The pursuit of justice is always difficult because to find the truth, to find dharma is a difficult process because it requires very many inputs to come to some sort of a conclusion, and that is always difficult. But pursuit of justice at that point of time has always been expensive. You forget that at one point of time in India, the final court of appeal was the Privy Council in Britain.
Right.
It's
We've come a far way.
always been expensive. And there were lawyers in those times. I have heard of these exorbitant fees being charged by the famous lawyers of those years. So it was proportional. But they were always extremely wealthy lawyers. My father used to always tell me this story, and he was a doctor, so he used to always tell me this anecdote about how a king was on his, minor potentate of a local Raja was on his deathbed, and he called, and a doctor was called from Calcutta, so he went to visit the doctor, and he realized that when he was there, the king was on his deathbed, and there was a lawyer who was also called, and the lawyer was giving much more importance than him. So he was very upset by it, saying that, no, I am the person who's going to looking after the king, and how come you're paying more attention to the doctor?
Sure.
So the answer was that if a king dies, there will be another king. But if the estate goes, there will not be another estate.
But
But
on a serious note,
I'll
yeah.
come, there is one point that I did not mention, is that whether this profession has become rewarding or not. Yes, it has become very rewarding. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the ones who should be looking for work-life balance or who should have asked for work-life balance were the ones in your generation who, although worked harder than what we do now, and yet were not paid enough. Now, this generation of lawyers, the reward is better than what it was earlier. I'm not saying
When
that
you
it is
mean reward, it's financial incentive.
financial rewards. Financial rewards, and also the reward of going and arguing in courts. Now you will see youngsters going and arguing in Supreme Court, which was not the case, say, 30 years ago.
No, at 30 years, it's extremely high.
But when does that idealism disappear? Because when you're growing, I saw a lot of my friends during college, look up to Harvey Specter and different other characters from pop culture.
I don't know how much idealist Harvey Specter is. Whatever little I've seen of Suits,
yeah.
I think his deviousness is what a lot of people identify with.
Yeah.
But yes, we all got into the profession wanting to change the system. I don't know anyone who got into law who didn't want to be a part of change. But time has its own way of beating the hell out of that.
हम सरकार बदलने आए थे, हम सरकार बन गए.
I won't put it that way.
But
I would
not
just
in a-
say the
not in a
system takes
devious
care
way,
of itself,
but
that
yeah.
it's a process. It's like that famous Oscar Wilde story of the picture of Dorian Gray. You don't
Yeah.
recognize the image which you have become.
Right.
And sometimes you yourself don't recognize what you have become. You still think, whenever you look at yourself in the mirror, you look at yourself of that old idealist person. Because everybody in their own mind has a justification of what they have done. I have had another very interesting conversation with one of the lawyers who were, when I was in Kolkata, who was one of the great eminent lawyers, a very old man, eminent lawyers of that generation.
Okay.
And once after a little bit of a party, and there were lots of lawyers, I dropped him off to the car, and he was slightly in great spirits. So when I dropped him off the car, he turned around and told me, we tried to, and this is like someone who's like 40 years older than me.
Okay.
And he was talking to a little kid who was dropping him to the car. And he said that we in our generation tried to change the system and failed. And hope you succeed. I was like, I can say the same thing about it today.
Yeah.
No,
I think it's a process of I think it's a process of becoming realist. There's that old saying as, why did a lot of the liberals in the 1960s become conservative? So the famous saying used to be that I was a liberal mugged by reality.
Right.
So maybe it's
Eventually
a lot
it
for
does
a lot
come
of
out.
us,
But
yes.
when you are young, you think the possibilities are endless. When you come to my age, 35, or
You're not
pretty
that
young.
old.
You're
I
pretty
do- yeah,
young. You're pretty young.
I mean, when you are like in college and 20, 25 years old, you think the possibilities are endless. You are going to change the world. 10 years down the line, you you think that no, nothing is going to change. I would rather change myself. There was this movie called The Rainmaker, in which this young guy um, who basically ambulance chaser lawyers who fights a insurance claim case of a cancer patient which was denied by the insurance company. There he meets this old lawyer, and they had a conversation where it says that where the old person says that, look, this profession is like every lawyer who comes into this profession wants to change the world, and so basically this profession is like a pool of water, and you come here and want to change change the way things are going on, and there is an invisible line which every lawyer restricts himself from crossing.
Okay.
But there are times when you have to cross that invisible line. And then, being in the profession, you cross that line so many times. I mean, I'm not giving
becomes
it verbatim.
normalized.
I'm just giving you the idea of what he said.
Sure.
That there is this invisible line which you cross as to so many times that it becomes invisible. And once it becomes invisible, you are then again one of those sharks who are already lying there in the pool.
Right.
So the whole thing is that you want to change the world. People in the past have not been able to do it. How are you going to do it?
That's maybe the way of actually looking at it. But on a lighter note, when you mention all these big bookshelves and all of that, as a journalist, it would make me a little insecure and jealous that lawyers would, display their fancy bookshelves, especially in front of television, when senior lawyers would appear on news debates and all of that, right? And then when you think about it today, perhaps those kind of physical infrastructure should be obsolete, but people still like all of that, perhaps.
Yes, of course.
No, people in Delhi like paintings better.
Yeah.
So I again
is
had
it?
this. This is part of my realization as a lawyer. When I first shift, I come from Kolkata, where books are like really ingrained into the system and where everybody loves their books. So I come to Delhi and I meet this very eminent lawyer, and he says, I don't have place for enough books. I put paintings in my office because you do the research and you bring it to them. I thought that was a very casual statement, either very flippant statement.
Yeah.
But I now realize it's absolutely true. Because it also reflects the sort of skill which you have. Because your skill is in some ways as a person who argues the matter. And I don't think very senior lawyers today have the time to do the research themselves.
Yeah.
All that being said, I have this very enormous library and I love the books in that library. I know where each and every book of mine is there.
Right.
And out of the most precious things I have, everybody can vouch for, it's my library.
Right. Yeah.
Because you love those books, and it is those books which have sort of contributes to your profession. Because as one of my bookseller once told me, because law books can be terribly expensive.
Okay.
So I'm reluctant to pay, terribly expensive. So you want to putting out the money and you're reluctant to put it out. So he, common bookseller who comes and gives you books. So he says, sir, आप पैसे देना नहीं चाहते हो क्योंकि आप सोचते हो ये बुक महंगा है, मगर आप सोचिए कि इससे अगर आपके एक भी रेलेवेंट केस निकल जाए तो आप ये किताब के 10 गुना ज़्यादा आप कमाओगे. तो isn't it worth it? And I think this being said by a number of people in the profession, publishers of books, have always told me, when I've asked them that you price your law books a lot.
Yeah.
So their answer to that is you would require that one citation. It
Yeah.
would make your career. It would make huge amounts of money. Why do you grudge us?
Since you grew up in Calcutta and even Shubhendu is from Bihar, I mean, all of us are from different geographies and we grew up in different environments. Calcutta perhaps being one of the wildest of them all. What makes everyone believe in justice? If someone were to pick a conflict with you and then eventually somebody delivers a judgment, somebody is still accepting it despite being dissatisfied or satisfied with it. What do you think makes Indian judiciary, we've not got there. I mean, it's always not 100% satisfaction, of course. But there is a sense that there is a justice in this country.
For everywhere, at some point of time, disputes have to be resolved. So whether we like the final outcome of that or not, we have to reconcile ourselves that this is what we have to live with. Because at the end of the day, sort of the decision-making process, the state's decision-making process, judiciary decides as to what is the final outcome of the dispute. So to that extent, everybody has to reconcile themselves. But I think as Indians, as Bharatiya, as Desis, as people who've been attached to this civilization, for us, we see justice as a manifestation of natural law.
Yeah.
So that's the natural order of things. So even if we find an outcome of a decision-making process is unjust, if you see the common Indian justification of things would be that maybe that's the way the cards fall in this world,
Right.
which is substantially different from being reconciled to the outcome of the decision-making process, because then it's process-oriented,
Yeah.
like largely Western.
Yeah.
While in India, it's more substantive, justice-oriented.
Yeah.
And that's why you remember that right in the beginning of the conversation when we were discussing, while Indian decision-making, justice decision-making is much more consensual and much more deliberative, much more social. The Western decision-making process is much more state-oriented,
Okay.
much more letter of the law oriented, and much more, that's why rights-based than the Indian decision-making process, because it's your individual rights which you're asserting, unlike in Indic systems where it's much more social in that respect. So panchayat system is a social justice system, and it's always been that. You know that implementation is by societal sanctions,
Yeah.
while the decision-making process in the West has always had the sanction of force of the state.
But the society can also be a little emotional at times.
No, society can be unfair.
Yeah.
There are instances, and I don't want to name it because I've had the opportunity
Sure.
of being in various different positions. So one of them, I was part of
No,
when I've seen
yeah.
this decision-making process up close of a certain state which had that sort of a practice, where till today that's recognized. The decision-making process of societal decision-making process has the sanction of law
Yeah.
very strongly in a certain state, where I had a very responsible position. I saw that there are disadvantages to it. Not any process is not perfectly 100% correct. It works very effectively. People are reconciled to it. People accept it.
Yeah.
And people, literally, courts have no work there.
Yeah.
I know for a fact courts have no work.
That's the most surprising thing. There's faith in that institution, regardless of how we perceive
decision-making
it to be.
process, society is perfect. But of course, when you dig a little deeper,
Yeah.
you think that, let's say, you work in a panchayat. The village panchayat will be dominated by certain groups. It will obviously, till today in India, be dominated by men, which
Yeah.
in itself skews the decision-making process in a certain way.
So how do you bring about uniformity? अभी जब हम uniform civil code के बारे में बात करते हैं, not just in politics, when we are drafting law, when we are making rules, how do we introduce that uniformity when our society itself is not uniform?
Exactly,
in a manner of
that's the
speaking?
problem. I mean, my reservation with bringing in uniformity in laws, in social order, is that Indian society is not uniform. I don't speak the language that you speak or he speaks. What kind of uniformity do you want? Do you want one language that everyone speaks? You want one law that everyone follows? Now, on the issue of marriage, the way my customs are very different from yours, and probably yours as well. My wife's customs are prayer customs, marriage customs. Everything is very different from mine.
Yeah.
What kind of uniformity do we want? What I gather and what I believe is that the uniformity that we talk about is in regulation. That things have to be regulated in a uniform manner. And by regulation, I mean that marriage, you want to get married, get married according to your customs. But registration of marriage is a regulation.
Right.
So you make it uniform, that every marriage, irrespective of the way it is conducted, has to be registered by a central law, under a central law, or a state law, whatever. That is what the uniformity is about.
Or is that what we've just been able to arrive at? Because the popular criticism is that there's too much paperwork, there's too much procedure, and that the judiciary is always overburdened because there's also a lot of regulations.
That's exactly what you're saying. I think the solution, therefore, is to, in many ways, which will take us a little bit to recognize, is as a civilization to go back to the dharmic process. With, of course, you'll have to have your check and balance, because we don't live in 700 AD or 800 AD.
Yeah.
So, or AE as Common Era, CE. We don't live in 800 CE.
Sure.
But you will have to have your check and balance. But the process we'll have to accept is, we'll have to come out of the litigative, strictly process, Western
Can you
process.
explain with a few examples, like what we can look up to in the past from our past?
As I always say, you look at the number of solutions which happen in land disputes in villages, where there is no paper, which is decided by social consensus, which is decided through panchayat, which the state is naturally very suspicious of.
Yeah.
But still today, most of the land disputes, as all of us who by lived example, land disputes, property disputes, boundary disputes are settled by, even civil disputes, marriage disputes are settled in panchayats.
Correct. Yeah.
How the state itself is extremely squeamish about how to recognize it.
No, I have a
And
feeling.
till today, it's there till today.
I have a feeling that people, in general, have very little faith in state when it comes to regulating their lives. They would rather go by the diktat of the court than go by the diktat of the state, which I think is fine, because judiciary, an independent limb of our country.
Yeah.
State can have its own reservations against you, because state is the one who is going against your rights or going after you in many disputes. The judiciary is not going after you, because the judiciary is not in dispute with you. And that is why people submit themselves to the diktats of the judiciary than the diktats of the state.
Right.
One very small example of it is that if there is a fine levied on a person by a policeman or a municipal authority, that person would rather challenge it in the court and pay equal amount in court
Instead of giving it to the
instead
policeman.
of giving it to the policeman.
So it's also, I think it's also about vindication, because we Indians have a sense of, and I'm saying this, in society, and that's integral to how we are perceived in society. See, no one, that's famously that entire example, that no one does not commit murder because they are afraid of the law, because that is a part of it. But people don't commit crimes because they're afraid of what people would think.
Right.
Yeah. So you are actually a wonderful, nice person, because you know that if I committed and I got caught and I was convicted, what would my friends think? But that's the Indian way to look at things.
But in a sense, that is what also keeps us, perhaps binds us from committing crimes.
I think that's the reason why In many ways.
That
when we
log
ha-
kya kahenge is
Yes,
actually
yes,
works
yeah,
out
log
Log
kya
kya
sometimes.
kahenge
kahenge is actually a very
It's
effective
works out.
mechanism to control your behavior.
Yeah.
You
I
otherwise.
think we've always, when we grew up, because I grew up in a world, and I studied at the National Law School, which was extremely rights oriented, in many ways very Western oriented, American oriented even.
Yeah.
But that's, when you really frowned upon all these things, these conceptions. But I think that's the grain of, if you don't understand that, you don't understand really India.
But how do you address the excesses of log kya kahenge? Adultery, somebody, there's like an entire social commentary. I mean, we've
I'm
gotten
on
away-
the wrong
we've-
side of adultery. See, if you look at the Indian conceptions of family, Indian conceptions of marriage, people still hang on to that. It's much derided. It's much derided in the liberal press, saying that it's conservative, backward, it doesn't account for facts on the ground. All of us who read old ancient texts, and which we read also, it's not that adultery did not exist. You read and I'm saying that Kama Sutra as a
No,
book.
it's not an accusation
existed.
on the
It's-
judiciary that it's
that's how
conservative.
It existed.
Yeah.
It existed. People accepted it. But the way you treated it was different. You did not make it into a rights-oriented assertion of rights of anyone. What is the objective which you want through a decision-making process? We wanted a more harmonious society rather than in a process where you are sharpening conflicts
That's
in
also
society.
a problem because you're seeing judiciary as a disabler rather than an enabler. Why do kids have to fight for years in court just to get rid of a Victorian era law like Section 377? It's perhaps that frustration that's
No,
setting in
I
with,
think
with
it's Section 377
that's
part
just
of
an
the
example.
IPC,
Yeah,
is
yeah,
part of the IPC. And we all know we've had huge issues with a lot of the framing of the IPC. The fact is, I'm at no point of time ever going to say that that the state or for that any matter should interfere in your private life.
Sure.
But I'm also of the view that of politicization and creating divisions based on who you stand, where you stand in respect to Article 377. You know that's part of the discourse. You know that. Otherwise, that I think is either you treat it as a personal thing, it's your private thing, whatever you do, we are not concerned, and that's where it ends. And no one should criminalize what you do in your private life. But on the other hand, there should be also it should not be as a method of organizing people. It should not be in the words of what is liberally called a site for claiming rights.
Correct.
So, I
But
accept
what makes judiciary still independent? I mean, if we look at the criticism of, say, some of our popular criticisms of our institutions, people perceive that the media is compromised because there's too much corporate takeover of the media. And I can go on and on about other institutions, but still about the judiciary, there's a sense that it's still largely independent.
Yeah,
and it's
people
one of
have
the-
faith. People do have faith, and that is why they are coming to courts. Otherwise, they
So
would not
what
go to
makes judiciary so independent, according to you?
court. Because judiciary has no skin in the game. You are fighting against the state, you are fighting against your neighbor, you are fighting against people. You are not fighting against judiciary, and that is why people have that faith in judiciary. If judiciary becomes a party to the game, then people will not have faith.
So what are the dangers? How do you think it may potentially get compromised?
No, it won't. The only thing that is potentially dangerous is politicization of judiciary.
Right.
And by politicization, I mean that a judge gives an order or a judgment, and you criticize him saying that, oh, this judgment is politically colored, or politically there has been a political pressure to give that judgment, or something like that.
The best judges have had it against them.
Yeah. And that is where the problem is. You never said that when the judge was giving orders in your favor.
Yeah.
Well,
The criticism is always heard louder once the noise is settled.
yeah, and the people who are criticizing are the ones who have been beneficiaries of it in the past.
Yeah.
Now that in one random judgment, the court in one random case, the court goes against you. You go after the court. Well, you never went after the court when the court was giving judgments in your favor.
Is that something that you learned particularly from the Ram Janmabhoomi case?
Well, I see those cases increasingly these days. Ram Janmabhoomi was a very different case altogether. Although it was, I mean, let me put this on record. People think that it was a constitutional case, it was a some social case or something. No, it was not. It was
a property
essentially a property dispute. It was a land dispute. It was a purely civil case.
Right.
People who fought it in the High Court, where it was fought as an original case, original suit, actually did a marvelous job of ensuring that it is fought like a civil dispute and not like a constitutional or social or secularist dispute, because it is not. They ensured that the plaint is drafted in a manner, in a manner that makes it a civil suit. And that is what the entire case is about.
Just to add to it, I think the plaint was drafted by the main plaint for Ram Lala Shivirajman and Asthan Shri Ram Janmabhoomi. There were two plaintiffs in that plaint.
Oh yeah.
Which was the last plaint which was filed.
Yeah.
Was, I think, it's a work of art.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was drafted by a former Attorney General, the then former Attorney General, very famous, Lal Narayan Sinha.
Ellen Sinha.
Yeah.
One of the greatest lawyers in India. It's a work of art. And I always say this, that if you want to read a plaint, you should read that plaint.
Yeah.
It is stunningly, brilliantly drafted, incorporating every legal point that can be raised.
Right.
Yet playing it in a way so that unless the other person is as adept in the knowledge of law as the person drafting it, the person will not get the twists in the law which have been put in.
And just to give an anecdote, that the person who drafted this plaint, Ellen Sinha, who came from Bihar, lawyers have no ideologies, let us be very clear.
Sure.
But that person served under as AG,
Yes,
under
so
the
did K.
Congress
Parasaran.
government.
So did Mr. Parasaran, who argued the
Yeah.
matter eventually. Was the Attorney General in the Congress government. But
Twice.
I don't think...
Once during Indira Gandhi and once during Rajiv Gandhi, Mr. Parasaran was the Attorney General for India. Ellen Sinha was Attorney General, I think, or Solicitor. He was Attorney General, Solicitor General.
That's what Mr. Parasaran says he was attorney. So
Okay, no, Mr. Sinha.
Mr. Sinha, I think I heard
Sinha was either Solicitor General or Attorney General under the Indira Gandhi government. And that person drafted the plaint.
Right.
It was argued by Mr. Parasaran. Okay. People who are criticizing the judgment now, or they created issues when this was being heard in the Supreme Court, they don't realize that the foundation has been laid by lawyers who once served in the Congress government.
Right.
And again, I want to make it very clear, lawyers have no ideology.
Yeah.
When you are in court, you don't have an ideology.
Yeah.
Outside the court, you can have an ideology. You can be XYZ party's spokesperson.
Yeah. It's a professional obligation.
Yeah, it's a professional obligation. Somebody goes with a case to the lawyer, he would not think about his own political leanings. Or she would not think about her own political leanings.
What do you think the future of law is? Especially, we are talking super futuristic, like environmental law came in and then corporate law came in. There's technology.
I'm of the view that a large portion of the profession may be redundant, and I've discussed this. I've discussed it with a lot of people.
In what sense?
Because the sort of research which goes into researching about the law, which is basically the first 5-10 years of the profession that you spend. You spend in preparing a list of dates, you're preparing a sort of a plaint or drafting agreements or drafting plaints to file petitions to be drafted in court, doing legal research. I think AI is substantially on its way to take care of that.
Right.
So, which would mean that lawyers' role would now, as litigation experts, would be restricted to just arguing and maybe strategizing in the matter, which again would require you very different skills. And the profession is on its way to be substantially changed by AI. I have one more point to add. I think which, to sort of in some ways addressing Shubhendu's point as to why is the judiciary extremely respected. I think the reason why the judiciary is respected is because historically, civilizationally in India, we have always put people who sort of decide on the law at a higher pedestal than people who implement the law. So you would understand, therefore, the people who sort of discuss and decide on the law was a certain group of people. They've always, Panch Bhagwan hai. We've always
Panch Parmeshwar.
Panch Parmeshwar we call that. So, we've always believed in that.
Is that why
Although
we
I
call
would-
judges lords?
That comes from a British heritage. That's what I said. I always believed in that entire conception of path dependency theory, which is that famous theory which says that you can have any system in the world.
Yeah.
But that system, you put it into a society, the society then changes the system so as to reflect itself.
But our lawyers, I mean, I know you may answer, you can answer this, but right now there are restrictions on your end as well. But if, like, this is one of the popular criticisms of lawyers especially, is that there's the sense that you're very immune and you pat yourself on the back, and that, every other institution or an individual can be compromised in some way, but lawyers do not have any of their powers receded. Like, you talk about a collation in a court, or generally lawyers are considered untouchable in a good sense.
Because the only reason for it is that you know the law. A policeman stops you while you are
So
driving.
do you think, as a civilian who is a non-lawyer,
Yeah.
who doesn't have a license, if I am aware of the law even half as much as you are, I would perhaps be significantly more powerful?
Well, no. See, I'll give you a real life example. I mean, it's not an anecdote. I'm just giving an example. That suppose you are drunk and you are driving.
Yeah.
The policeman stops you. What happens to you?
I either get fined, my vehicle gets seized, or I get arrested.
Yeah, but do you know that there is a limit to which you can drink and drive?
A limit to which, as in?
Limit of intake of alcohol.
Uh-huh.
Under the Motor Vehicles Act, there is a limit that is exempted.
Oh, yeah, like 1 or 2 pegs or something
Yeah,
like that.
something
Right.
like that. There is that much of alcohol in the blood.
But it never
is
works
for-
with the cops.
Yeah, exactly. It never works with the cops if you are a civilian, if you are a normal person. But if you are a lawyer, you can go and argue with him. Being a non-lawyer, if you argue, then you are creating an issue. But being a lawyer, if I argue, I can then drag him to court.
Yeah.
Okay? I can drag him to court saying that, oh, he did me, I'm exempted, but he tried to apprehend me or do whatever he wants to. For me, court is my home. I go there every day.
Right.
For you, it is not.
For me,
so
it's
the policeman
additional work.
or the law enforcement knows that this chap is all the time in court, and he will file a case, and then I will have to run to the court every day. And that is why I'm not supporting it. I'm not supporting what.
No, there shouldn't be hooliganism in any profession.
Yeah.
But if it makes the profession so much more
I
powerful
also
by itself,
I
then I
also
think
think that most of the political decision making in today's world, and this is not my sort of saying that, I think that's a discussion which is all over the world, is increasingly after the 90s, most of the political decision making has now been taken off the discussion which used to be decided in a democracy from the field of politics and been ring-fenced into judicial, into the judicial field. So in many ways today, the judicial space is where political battles are also fought out. So, so it's not independent. So lawyers, I would say, when they appear in very many cases arguing for a point of view, are not only do they signify as plain lawyers, they also are a representative of that political point of view.
Is
and
that why-
politicals,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying political strictly in party political terms. Political, I'm also talking in terms of the politics of
state,
everyday life.
Yeah.
Which is even more pervasive
Yeah.
than party political.
But is that why lawyers naturally make good politicians later on? I mean, we've had a lot of prime ministers and heads of states who are non-lawyers and still been incredibly good in that sense.
See, what is the role of a parliamentarian? Lawmaking.
Making laws.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here is a guy who is trained in law, who knows what shall means or what will means, what may means and what should means.
Yeah.
That person will definitely make a.
That's quite
better-
rudimentary, but lawyers inspire even other professionals as well. I mean, us in the media look up to somebody like a Jethmalani, Chidambaram, Arun Jaitley, and there is a sense of, there's an aura around them.
No, because lawyers are fighting battles which are under public scrutiny. You see lawyers on TV. You don't see an AI somebody who built a wonderful AI app or a system, AI system. Do you see him on TV often? But you see popular lawyers on TV every other day. Why? Because they are fighting cases which are under public scrutiny, which are under media's attention all the time. You go to Supreme Court and you will see media cameras, like dozens of media cameras are focusing and interviewing lawyers and doing this, that. And probably
you need to have something to be composed.
No, it's also because I think lawyers are extremely articulate people.
Yeah.
And lawyers can, in
Do you
many
need to be
ways-
articulate to be an extremely good lawyer?
Yes.
Yes.
I largely, yes. And on the other hand, lawyers are also, what is the job of a lawyer? You're solving a problem.
Yeah.
I think solving a problem and being articulate, they are the perfect combination of being a good
politician
political,
also.
be a good participant in the political
But generally,
space.
why do we hear so much about lawyers who are articulate, particularly in English, and then all the vernacular ones,
I
sort
think
of
that's
get
across
sidelined?
the board. If tomorrow the language of the courts were Hindi or Bangla, I don't think that would make a difference. Because if you were a lawyer, your entire object is to be able to solve a problem, make complex issues extremely simple so that the common person can understand it. Because at the present, you're trying to convince the judge, and I think that will appeal to the common person. Same skill is applied. You will be basing it on knowledge which you have, and also you are an articulate person.
And also you are most articulate in your mother tongue.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That's the reality. I mean, you go to, I don't know if that is the case in Karnataka, but in Bihar, in Patna High Court, if you go, the most articulate arguments are made by lawyers who are arguing in Hindi
Hindi, Bhojpuri.
rather than English. No, Bhojpuri is not a recognized
not
language
recognized,
yet. I'm very sad about it, but be that as
Across all courts, it's Hindi
it may. No,
and
it is not
English?
recognized by the government. It is not
Right.
in the 8th schedule. So it is just considered a dialect.
So just the official languages are used.
Official language.
Right.
So official language of Bihar, Hindi is there, Urdu is there, but Hindi is the predominant language in Bihar. So and I'm sure in Bengal also, in Calcutta.
I know of very eminent lawyers, and this is my experience of Kolkata, who would be very eminent barristers, and they would be brilliantly present in their case in the High Court in English. And then they would go, there's a narrow corridor linking the High Court to the city civil courts. They will go, and I've seen this happening, they would go over to the city civil court where they would cross-examine witnesses, impeccable Bangla.
Right.
And it was almost as if it was a switch. As my father always used to say that English speaking is a skill. Don't think of it as your way of life.
Yeah.
So it's just a skill.
Yeah, it's just
it's
a
like a
medium of
skill like
communication.
math.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But is it the norm that I've never been to a court? So I'm these are very basic
Please
questions.
come, I'll take you to court. I mean, I'm not dragging you to court, I'm taking you to court.
No, but is it the case that both the parties use the same language, or is it like somebody can use Hindi and
Ideally,
somebody
the
can...
language of the court has to be followed.
The court prefers English. The Supreme Court prefers English.
Okay, yeah.
But in the High Court, if you want to argue in your own language, or the language which is also has to be a recognized language of the court of that state, you can argue in that language. In Delhi, people argue in Hindi. I know for a fact.
And on the issue, I mean, since we are discussing language, let me discuss dress. You know that a lawyer can also wear a dhoti, a white dhoti, white kurta, and a black coat, and go and argue in court.
This was a popular debate just a few weeks ago on Twitter.
You have a chapkan, you have a achkan,
Yeah.
you have, and these are designated.
Delhi ki
Achkan,
garmi mein, abhi 48 degrees mein, you can't wear all of that and go. It's inhuman.
no, but you still have to wear a band and you still have to wear a gown.
But it's
I'm
inhuman.
saying that your traditional
But your
dresses,
band and gown goes back, as they say, to the
But we need to get
to
done
the
with it, I
execution of
think.
Mary Queen of Scots. But that's what I'm saying. So, as I said, you may have your wonderful colonial legislations and colonial structures,
Yeah.
but within which you're actually
Operate.
Indian. You're Indian.
Hopefully that changes. Some of the basic things I think we need to
I
get
hope
done
we,
with.
as we
Air
come
conditioning,
into
for
New
example.
India,
Yeah.
we are more assertive about that,
Yeah.
and we can slowly get rid of
I hope so.
the process of
Do you think
colonization.
capital infusion is something as simple as capital infusion can solve all these things, like getting AC, getting better
No, I
parking
think
lots.
translation. I think the courts are trying to do a great job in getting judgments of the Supreme Court translated
into the
very-
official
in
Indian
a
languages.
large number of languages.
Large number
So
of
that
languages.
it's accessible.
Yeah.
So to make it accessible, I think that's a great initiative.
I have a client who
Yeah.
is from Karnataka, Hoskote. She is a Dalit. She is not. She did not go to a proper school or something. She has a land dispute. I'm fighting her case. I win her case. I go and take the judgment. Go give it to her. She does not understand a thing of it because the judgment is in English.
Yeah.
If it were translated in Kannada, she would
She would
get
be
to
very
know-
happy.
She would be very
Yeah.
happy to read the judgment. Now she is hearing what I have argued. I will tell her that, oh, this is what happened. Now the piece of land is with you. She would be happy. But if she reads what the judge has written, that no, she has toiled hard to own this land and then preserve it, and that is why this land goes to her. It should be with her. She would be very happy reading.
What do you think? Yeah, sorry. Please.
And that is why I think increasingly all the courts should ensure that their judgments, whether, say, for example, in Karnataka or in Bengal, if you are delivering, High Court is delivering a judgment in English, they should ensure that it is also translated in the state's official language.
I think that's slow process. I think
Yeah.
that will
Because
come
the
in its time.
litigants, the local litigants who are coming to court, they should at least know what happened to their case in black and white.
As a young lawyer, what are the avenues that younger lawyers who are perhaps studying now and are about to graduate can look into? Because like right now, cyber crimes are increasing. There's biotech and all sorts of
I think there is
newer
money.
issues
See,
coming
these
up.
days people are driven by the idea of making money in the profession, which is fine because there is a lot of money in the profession.
That's okay in terms of specialization. I'm
There
saying
is money in everything.
Okay.
There's money in everything. I have friends who do absolutely criminal matters and they are making tons of money. There are people who are doing exclusively civil matters. Property disputes, transfer of property, succession.
But are we ready to say address some of the modern day disputes
But
that may
I'll
emerge
come-
because of technology and
I'll
other
tell
things?
you one thing that is making a lot of noise in the country, and you would probably end up making a lot of money. Is in the field of litigation is insolvency and bankruptcy.
Yeah, that's
The legislation that the code that this government came up with, that the company courts, the NCLAT and NCLT, are heavily burdened with insolvency and bankruptcy matters.
Okay.
And lawyers are making fortune.
I agree with Shubhendu that as more and more things come up, there is always a method which comes out of to resolve disputes, which disputes always happen. So as new things get implemented, new laws get implemented, like RERA for that matter. But housing disputes, it's just come up. There is an airports tribunal which deals with the airlines disputes. So I think that all of this will happen.
Or even
Electricity tribunal,
technology
law, biotechnology law, disputes will happen. So as Shubhendu says, we tend to look at sort of subjects in boxes.
Okay.
I think what is required is an ability to grasp ideas and to be able to convert that into simple understandings.
We have done together a lot of telecommunication cases.
Okay.
And telecommunication is one field which is very challenging, and you can make a lot of money. It's a new thing for you to read what unified licensing is. UL is unified licensing and UAL is unified access licensing. I mean, these are all technical terms which lawyers normally don't understand. But if you read, you will understand. Well, you never had a training in technology.
Although it
I
was
didn't have
just
it.
complex for the
But you
public to
are-
understand.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. The ability to make complex things simple.
Yeah.
It's not very easy, especially in scientific terms, let's say complex patent disputes.
But why can't law be simple? Is it because it's a method of gatekeeping?
No, that's an easy way of saying that. I've heard it
I'm
being
kidding.
said that the reason why law journals, all those wonderful books that you see in a library, are so complex to figure out
Yeah.
as to how to get to a certain
Yeah.
volume is
Yeah.
because as a method of gatekeeping, so that normal people can't access it. All that being said, because we live in a complex world. The reason why law is complex because law reflects us. Law is the key to understanding society. That's another reason why, again, lawyers make good politicians, because it's the key. Law is the basis or the mean on which the society runs. And society is complex. Society's disputes are complex. And so, therefore, law has to be complex enough to be able to resolve those disputes. So, whether you resolve them in an indic manner through the justice system, or largely through having a holistic understanding, or whether you deal with it in strictly Western terms with a statute which makes complex statutes to address complex problems. No, either way, you have to have a complex understanding.
But law has always been complex, even in the ancient times.
Yeah, you have
when
to.
When you had a family
You
and
look at Niti
succession
Shastras,
laws,
you look at Niti Shastras,
Yeah.
you look at any text of Niti
Yeah,
Shastra, you look at
Smriti, which
Artha
is
Shastra,
basically a
you look at Dharma Shastra.
They're all very complex
Extremely-
texts.
they are complex texts.
Yeah.
And you had to have specialized people to be able to understand them, interpret them,
Right.
even in those days. So it's not something which we are not used to. Civilizationally, that's what we've...
So I wanted to ask this whole accusation that everything is being codified and that's somehow an inconvenience. If you read even Arthashastra for that matter, lot of things were codified even at that point.
I have my...
There is
There is a dispute onto that.
Yeah.
What is the nature of Arthashastra? How was it implemented?
But
there are
in
people
general,
who would say
yeah.
that, you treat Manusmriti like a code, or you take a Dharma Shastra like a code. And there are people who would say it, and there's a strong...
It was never meant to be a code.
No, it's never meant to be a
Yeah.
code. It was meant to be, at the most, the best example which you can come up with is, it's sort of manual of instructions,
Yeah.
which you read various different manuals, since you read, and
Yeah.
then you... So, the Arthashastra of Kautilya is not the only Arthashastra. I'm
Right.
sure
Yeah, there are different
you know
versions.
that. There are a
Yeah.
number of Arthashastras, there are a number of Niti Shastras,
Yeah.
there are a number of Dharma Shastras, and they have various, at times, within the same Dharma Shastra, conflicting points of view. Different Dharma Shastras have different conflicting points of view. And a judge in that issue who were deciding on that issue would consider the impact of, of actually Dharma, Artha, Kama. So these are the three considerations you would always need to have.
Yeah.
And Dharma, Artha means what is what is the best benefit which is possible. And Dharma is what is the objective good. And Kama is what is pleasurable. So in which you would use these three tools to come to a decision. To solve a certain situation, to decide on what that person's dharma is, what he should have acted on, and why he failed to act in that dharma. This is a complex process, required very specific, knowledgeable people.
But then how do you develop techniques to solve some of the issues, like say cartography issues especially that we've had after partition? A lot of the issues trace back like 100 years, simpler things that could have been done had they had enough time perhaps. And we've not been able to solve a lot of these things even
People
today.
think, see, the whole idea of map, that you are drawing a boundary,
Yeah.
is a very...
It's a legal problem, but other states have been able to do it. China has been able to solve a lot of these things.
No, but this is a very mechanical process. It takes into consideration only the territorial aspect of things.
I think China has been able to do it because China has because runs its state in a different way.
Yeah.
And China, as you know, private property is relatively new to China. Private property was completely abolished and reformulated, Cultural Revolution, where they tried to burn everything to the ground, and even then they were not successful. But in India, our conceptions of property is very different from the Western conceptions of property.
How's that different?
Substantially different, because we don't believe in absolute ownership of property.
I think as individuals
No, we
do.
have something called swatta, which is how actually property is held. Like you have this wonderful mic. This mic technically I assume belongs to whoever it belongs to. But in the mic you would have different components which would actually belong to different people, within which you would have components which would be owned by different companies, in which the technology is owned by different people.
Yeah.
So though
Yeah,
you
right.
objectively own the mic, and technically that technology could be transferred to a different company.
Yeah.
But because you bought the mic, you haven't bought the... and our understanding of property has always accepted that. And I'm giving you a technical of a mic. It accepted that on land, the king will have a separate swatta on the land. The tenant will have a separate transferable swatta on the land. The middle holders would have a separate swatta on the land. Swata and ownership is not different. While in the West, ownership is absolute. In fact, someone like Karl Marx, when commenting of Indian sort of holding of property, said very clearly this ownership of absolute ownership of the king being eminent domain, of king owning all the property, was unknown to India. So our conceptions, that's on property, and which reflected in how you map property, how you sort of demarcate what is your property, what are the boundaries of your property. Because if your conception that you have a multi-layered holding of property, how can you demarcate what your property exactly is?
If we look at India's
Of
like
land especially.
Yeah.
So there's an increased attempt to sort of, again, as you would know, that most of land in India, therefore, it becomes very difficult to demarcate.
right.
But we are moving into, and I always say this, that irrespective of anything, irrespective of our civilizational background, the challenge is that you're moving to a new economy.
Yeah.
The challenging is, you can't go back home.
But are we
So-
moving towards preventive measures? Like mapping is improved significantly, which is why like disputes are perhaps
So
lesser.
eventually you may have to do that, because if you're going to convert itself to a full-fledged sort of free market economy, which sort of
Yeah.
it seems to be consensus that we want, because
Yeah.
in some ways you cannot go back home,
Yeah.
then some of the tools to make that economy work, including clear demarcation of property, because then that property can be exchanged for the benefit of and to earn, may have to be implemented. But whether that is, but then that leaves a lot of conflict. I think, the whole concept of lands held in common, lands held by tribals of rights to use in forest, common village lands held by the deities, which is happens, which is everywhere.
Yeah.
How do you fit that into the scheme of things? That all becomes extremely complex.
I think deities hold more land than the normal human beings and
Yeah.
civilians in the villages.
Yeah, sure.
Village temples, the deities hold significant land.
When we
And
look,
which is essentially, if you look at it from a very traditional perspective, the deity land is basically community land, because everyone is benefiting out of it. They may not have claim ownership over it, but if a temple has land, that land is being used to benefit the people around it.
Sure.
The temple economy is getting benefited out of that land.
But the question is
But
how
still
you
there-
put that
there-
into a
yeah.
straitjacket. You can't. But then the process is we live in a modern world. We
Yeah.
are moving to a modern state and modern economy. You may have to reconcile whether that's how the cookie crumbles.
So you think that codification is a problem?
Codification has substantial problems. Objectively, it has substantial problems. In India, codification has led to a lot of identities getting sharpened and has led to a lot of conflict. But again, if you are going to have the sort of economy that one wants, you have to demarcate rights clearly.
I hope we had
And,
enough time to discuss how identities are so fluid, because we do it very often.
Because identities are extremely fluid. In India,
Yeah.
identities are like hugely fluid identities, who we are. And the Western view of the world that we have like clear, oriented, we are socially stratified country is not correct at all, because caste is a Portuguese institution which believes in some sort of a
Yeah.
complete hierarchy as to, the word casta comes from who gets what, how much of European blood is in that person based on which you classify it. That's not how it works in India. We've had people moving up and down, social groups moving up and down the ladder. I can name 100. I don't want to be controversial, but I can name in 100 years things have changed substantially. And I come from Bengal, which has a huge history of this. And we think it only starts with the Bhadralok, and it's sort of discussed as it starts with the Bhadralok. But more you read Bengali history, you would go back like 1,000 years back. People are discussing the same issue about, social stratification not being very strictly workable.
Is there any such thing as an institution at any point being completely irrelevant and losing its objectives, in the sense that India's had like very extremely diverse history in that sense. We've had many different forces ruling us over the years from different directions in that sense. And they have an idea of justice and law and order from the environment that they migrate from.
Yes.
So in that sense, even if the British tried to set up courts back in the day, perhaps I've never gone to it because I think the sense of justice is absent
Yes,
there.
of course. That's what I said. It's the crisis of confidence. The reason why
Yeah.
still date most of Indians, and Mahatma Gandhi actually recognized that, wrote that in the Hind Swaraj, exactly set out those reasons. There was a crisis of confidence in the courts because the courts were, according to them, a product of, in his so many words, which he said was a product of colonial intervention in Indian societal life. One may agree, one may not agree with that, but that's what it was. We've internalized it, we have made it into our own, we've institutionalized it, and then we have shaped it into what it actually is. So today, the Constitution substantially in its application, especially the fundamental rights which we were discussing, actually has come to resemble conceptions of governance that we are used to. For example, Article 21, right to life, is, it's interpreted as not mere animal existence. That's like straight out of the Upanishads.
Yeah.
Or when you define secularism, you say, ekam sad vipra bahuda vadanti. Now, ekam sad vipra bahuda vadanti is again a very, very dharmic Upanishadic description. Article 32, the very intricate interpretation which we have of Article 15, which is right to equality, 14, 15, 16, reservation. So you have said, not only do you have an absolute right to equality, but equality means treating equals equally and unequals unequally, which means you realize the social impact of it and how it works in India. When you talk about Article 19, you've already read in restrictions, because in India, if you read the Chanakya's Niti Shastra, you always ask that you have to be sweet in what you speak. Your speech has to be sweet.
He emphasizes a lot
on sweetness.
even in terms of the Raja Dharma and what a Raja
So
has
India is
supposed to do,
possibly the only country where you have a restriction built into your freedom of speech. You look at Article 25, you look at 26, which recognizes small groups within religions which are protected. Now these are completely Indian framing. How we worked it out is again completely Indian. So we've possibly got a constitution which comes from a different background, but and the laws.
Well, it's interesting. Do you think jurisprudence has evolved in these particular planes, perhaps, in that sense? If you look at it, the Mauryan Empire, the Guptas, and all of them was in a part of this geography. So do you think that
I think it's everywhere.
Centric?
I think it's not north-centric.
I think it's give that example of Gwalior when we went there and we had a discussion.
No, I think in so many instances, I don't think it's, first of all, I don't think it's north-centric. I think there are some universal principles of Indic civilization which we've always, I don't know how many of you know, there's a wonderful tract which I was reading a few days back where they were discussing the Marathas and the rise of the Marathas. When a Portuguese explorer discussing the Marathas explicitly thought in their mind that they were successors of the Vijayanagar Empire.
Is that so?
And they, the Portuguese say that and it's true, because the Battle of Talikota happens in 1500, and by within 150 years, the Marathas are back onto the scene and fighting their battles. So there is always a continuum, and there's always a recognition of civilizational understandings of justice which permeates us, which has never ever been broken, which has come under severe stress. I think the most severe stress over the last 200 years has been the British colonial system.
Right.
But the great thing in India is you think it is malleable, and then suddenly it springs back.
Correct. Yeah.
So British tried it in 1757 to 1857. And then it sprung back so badly on their faces. Then they actually, if you've seen 1858, the declaration of Queen Victoria, the first thing it says that we won't interfere in your ways of the world.
And also there is a misconception that the British gave us the laws and the codified laws and how to conduct ourselves. The
Mughals also did to a large extent.
In fact, before that also, you go back to the old documents in Gwalior.
In princely states. I think the princely states also had their
Baroda
own.
And all these places.
They had their own. See, large parts of India was not governed by British laws.
Right,
They were, because large parts of, you've seen the map in those days, were princely states. Princely states still traced their sort of formulations of the criminal code or dealing with criminal disputes,
criminal laws,
actually from Indic systems.
And they had
the irony of it is, that people who actually were there, and those books are there because they were written for those times. Today people have completely forgotten. They act as if those laws did not exist, and they've always worked under the Indian Penal Code.
So suppose I was alive 1500 years ago or 1000 years ago, and I was somewhere from the Deccan, and I'm traveling up north. There are different laws which are administered by different kingdoms. So how would I as an individual be aware of what the right thing and the wrong thing is?
Because you would know what your dharma is. See, that's the entire crux of it.
It all emanates
your
from the
governance,
same system.
Your governance
So you
system.
think there was never a point where there was perhaps conflict between...
No, because your dharma would change. See, your dharma as a person who lives in where I live is different from a dharma where... Let me put it this way. I live here in Delhi in Nizamuddin East.
Yeah.
You live in the adjacent colony in Jangpura. There'd be certain obligations at some point of time you would have to your neighbors in Jangpura, and I would have in Nizamuddin East, which are like colonies beside each other.
Yeah.
Most of it would be in common. That's what you would be judged. But there can be a conflict between, to your neighbors, to the good of your colony, there as well as with me. So the ability to understand that's all written very, very clearly. You have to address that. So you come with your differences, but you come with your commonalities.
But it's always
largely
about
the
coexistence.
commonalities were there because
it was a common
all
system.
emanated from the same system.
Because you would have realized, because there's been humongous movement of people all the time.
Moving.
I don't want movements of people coming from the north to the south, south from the north.
Right.
I don't know, Shankaracharya's own guru's guru was Gaurapada, who was supposedly from Gaur. I know this because, very much part of Bengali understanding of the world.
Yeah.
It's always been there, and people from Bengal have moved all over India. People from all over India have moved into Bengal. Again, it's a controversial statement, but there's a line of view which says the last great rulers of Bengal before of the sultans who came and took over Bengal were the Senas, and the Senas actually came from Karnataka.
Oh yeah.
So and the entire social stratification which you see today in Bengal is actually done by the Senas.
Right.
So
in fact, it's interesting that parts of Bangladesh before it was Islamized, I think the Senas had a great amount of influence over those
Senas.
regions.
They were the last rulers of Bengal.
Right.
Before the Islamic invasion, or before I would say the Khalji invasion of Bengal, were the Senas. And the Senas had Karnataka roots. To that extent, everybody knows that they had Karnataka roots, and even though, over a period of time.
But why is it that we find, I'm delving into history a little bit, is that especially when we did a video on how Bangladesh was Islamized, we found that a lot of the books that were written mentioned that it was because of Sufi culture that eventually Islam spread across the region, and Khilji perhaps had nothing.
To me, I would say it's all retrofitting history. It depends on, no one knows what happened.
Yeah.
So everybody retrofits their vision of the world or what should have happened at that point of time into history.
Sure.
Everybody reads their sources as to what is convenient for them.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of texts which speak about in various different voices. And what is the actual reason? Well, that no one knows.
But do you think, Shubhendu, I can ask you this, the governing philosophy, the dharma that the judiciary sort of tries to include in a lot of its rulings and judgments, do you think even that has a secular outline?
No, we have to understand what secularism means. Because
it was a cheeky question, but you get the gist of it.
Yeah, so we often think that secularism is separation of state and the church. But in India you practice it very differently.
No, in very simple words, if I were to say that yes, something from the Vedas had been inspired and the judiciary sort of uses that somewhere in the constitution or whatever. An Indian Muslim who is born here may say the same thing, that Quran has to be also included in this. That
No,
why
it
aren't
does
aspects
get-
of it?
See, on issues where when a larger issue is being decided and it relates to communities, um, I have often seen courts delving into religious texts, religious ideas. The judgment is not based on the religious text or religious ideas, but an idea is taken from there as to how this particular text talks about this.
Ram Janmabhoomi case.
No, I'll address it differently.
Yeah.
I think they're Indic texts.
Yeah.
And it is Indic and it's not religious. It is Indic text, and the judiciary which exists in India will have to find Indian solutions,
Right.
which has to be workable amongst the people
Yeah.
who are an Indic people. So the solutions will have to be Indic in nature. And the dichotomy is that you will have to frame it in a foreign language. You would have to frame it in English. You would have to frame it in Western terms, because otherwise, as you said, there's that entire contradiction, because it mixes because a lot of in our shorthand understanding,
Yeah.
religion and Indicness is mixed together when they are not
There's also
actually
that sense
religious.
that-
It's Indic.
Yeah.
It's Indic.
No, there's also
But
that
the
sense that we are
religious
perhaps
text
rushing into these things, especially when we look at the IPC being transformed into Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita.
No,
Like,
there's
it's-
nomenclature.
yeah.
No, but what I'm saying is that these religious texts and religious ideas do find a place in the judgments. Do find a place.
So the court does reflect that. Court
They do
uses that
reflect.
because the Indic idea is trying to solve Indian problems.
Right.
But they dare not, in some ways, use term it strictly religious, because then you'll have, because in any ways it is not religious.
Yeah.
But you can't call it that because you know the repercussions of calling it that. So
how can it be? It was the law of the land at one
So
point.
you
of
would
time.
say
People were
that-
governed in that fashion.
Upanishad would mean, ekam sad vipra bahuta vadanti. That's the entire sort of conflict of secularism in the Indian state, because the Indian states in many ways understand secularism as secularism. Your faith is private and there is a public sphere. You keep your faith private with you. But that's not actually how we implement it on the ground. The Supreme Court said it's more or less ekam sad vipra bahuta vadanti, which is basically the truth is one and people call it by different names. Which
Fair enough.
is
Part to
which
read
is a very Indic way of
very different.
seeing the world. It's like, that, and this is an example which the Greeks referred to in their time about what is Indian philosophy. That 7 wise men and that elephant, where everybody looks at different part of the world. It's elephant, but everybody calls it differently. Tail, ear, the tusk, and everybody, and the trunk, everybody calls it differently. But that's how, and that's an example given of Indic philosophy by the Greeks themselves.
Right.
So that's how we see it, but that's in many ways different from the way secularism actually is.
Yeah.
So that's the dichotomy, that's the conflict which we are slowly resolving of the Indian state and its origins and how it's going to shape up in the future for a new India.
I wish we had a lot more time because this can go on and on, but we'll try and wrap up in the next 2-3 minutes. If we were to conclude and say, you would have thought about how these institutions would evolve, looking down the rabbit hole. How do you see it? Challenges, opportunities, things that we must be prepared for, wary of?
I think science, I think we should be able to handle the challenges of science
Okay.
because it's evolving extremely rapidly, as well as being rooted in our own civilization, of our ethos. We have to be, unlike the past, we have to be able to interpret and apply science using our civilizational understanding of the world.
Right.
I think that's the crux of our challenge as a civilizational state for the future.
Interesting.
In the legal perspective. The rest, of course, there is. I think based on which we have to frame our justice system going forward. I think that's slowly happening.
How have non-Western countries that are
I think the
slightly more
China has its own way of
Taiwan
China.
and Singapore?
Taiwan, I think, is more of a, again, China is more possibly being able to deal with it in a civilizational way.
Okay.
But I think Taiwan and Singapore are westernized
Yeah.
China and westernized in many ways. So I think it would be dealing with it in a more of a westernized fashion. But I think China is trying to deal with it in its own way. We are all grappling with it. Because for the better or for worse, we've been in a world which has been 500 years dominated by, in some or the other ways, by Western civilization, especially for the last 200, 300 years. And to get out of it, it's 70 years now where decolonization process all over the world has started. It's going to take its own, but it's happening. You can see it in front of you. You can see the changes in front of you. But to play out, we have to both dig deep and look ahead.
Shubhendu, and maybe a concluding thought for young lawyers out there who may be watching this?
Well, I would go the Narayan Murthy way. So work hard as much as you can. Read everything. I mean, I can talk all these things with you and with public is simply because I read a lot of things. I randomly read books. I pick up books and read them. I think reading is very important. Read as much as you can. Work hard. There is no substitute to it. There's no work-life balance. As we talk, I have a 15 days old child. 15 days, not 15 months. 15 days old child who is at home, and I'm here talking. You will have to have these things in life where your family would be wanting you and you would not be available.
Yeah.
But that's the price we pay for a lot of things in the profession and in the longer run.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very hopeful that I may give my child a very bright future.
Yeah.
Make a lot of money. This is my suggestion, that people should work hard and make a lot of money, because it's important.
That's his way of saying, I need to get home very soon. I need to see my baby.
Work hard, make money, have a good life, go on holidays, and yet remain attached to your roots. I don't forget to go to my village at least twice a year.
Okay.
I don't forget to make trips to temples, to jungles, to understand what really India is, to small villages in the south, where I don't know a lot of things. I don't know the language, but I go, and because this is my country, I should know.
Because we, perhaps in the media and in the judiciary, we deal with the most ugliest of circumstances. And just to refresh yourself, especially when I used to do a lot of subaltern stories from the ground. When you go meet people on the ground, you look at that innocence and you are relieved for a minute that this is what you're doing it for.
I think it's a wonderful society. I was just speaking to someone and I said, I know friends of mine who travel all over the world. I have realized that you don't need to. I think, of course, if you have work, then you go. Otherwise, it's great to be in India. You can have the best thing.
Yeah.
And I wish all my young friends, they travel all over. When you're young, you want to travel, you want to see new things, experience new things. But I'm old and I'm happy. Traveling within India, appreciating India.
Yeah.
And the more I've realized that there is much, much more things that I do not understand. And I would like to get to know in India, in Bharatvarsh, than outside it.
People did not have an understanding of Daivas
Until
they saw Kantara.
Yeah, sure.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. There's so many things, many things. And the problem is
people as in people in the north.
Yeah.
I think there are so many
In
interesting
the south,
things.
in particular in Karnataka, we were, it's a fantastic film, no doubt.
Yeah.
But we were surprised at the proportion in which it blew up in other cities and in other states.
Because I'm sure all of us, who've lived ever in the village, would have seen an equivalent.
Local
Yet, we've never had a conversation in public sphere on that.
Yeah.
That speaks volumes of how we've worked in a society. While we pretend to be greatly westernized, we are who we are at our core. Yeah. And that's why a story like Kantara, which is very local, works stunningly for the rest of India and on a
for the
topic
global
which no
audience
one
as
has
well.
ever discussed. And no one thought that it can ever work.
Correct.
But the reason why it worked is all of us. I've been in
way
village.
Connect to those.
In some ways know this story.
Yeah.
That it happens, it exists, and half of us believes in it as well. However much westernized and however much we may be, logical in our
Yeah.
thinking, but we know.
And this is how values are transcended.
It's always been that way. A Singaporean friend once told me that from outside, when you see India, and he's Singaporean Chinese,
Yeah.
so he says, from outside when you see India, you think it's complete chaos.
Yeah.
But when you stay in India for a long period of time, you realize that it's perfect order.
Yeah.
Provided that you're inside and you know what that order is.
Yeah.
And I think
It's
that's
just
absolutely
noisy.
true.
That's it.
Yeah, but that's part of the fun. That's part of what it is.
On that note, I think we should treat ourselves with some South Indian food.
We'll
Because
do that.
since we discussed Kantara.
We'll do that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Pleasure,
This was
pleasure.
a fantastic
Dhanyavad,
conversation.
namaskar.
Thank you.